let's wrap it up with the fourth quarter. Becky Hammon has been utilizing the media and her post-game press conferences to send messages to her team. This is not the first time that she's done that this season. This is not the first time that we have talked about that on this podcast. And she more recently called out her team, the Las Vegas Aces, for a 30-point loss to a Caitlin Clarkless Fever team. She called out her team, said the losing effort was trash, a complete lack of professionalism. A'ja Wilson called it embarrassing. I mean, in that game, A'ja Wilson dropped 29 and they still lost by 30. A'ja Wilson was the only ace with double-digit points. Jackie Young was the second leading scorer in that game against the Fever, and she had just 6 points. So look, embarrassing, trash, I mean, whatever word you want to use and whatever word that was used, look, it's a fair assessment. But then we saw the Aces bounce back against Connecticut. A 20-point lead over Connecticut, 18 points from Aaliyah Nye off the bench, Alyssa Smith with a double-double. How do you assess this situation with the Aces? Because I always look at teams. I'm like, hey, if you're a championship team, you got to beat championship teams. Mm-hmm. And if you're a team that can beat the bad teams but can't beat the good teams, maybe you're just not a good team. What are the Aces right now?
I think what you just said, not a good team. And we've talked about the fact that Becky Hammon keeps calling out players, which is never a good sign. I think that the Aces have really just hung their hats on A'ja Wilson being A'ja Wilson, and that's just not going to be the answer. You can never just rely on one player to do everything that you want to do, or to play through her solely to win a championship. I think the problem with the Aces has long been, for a while, I guess you could say Kia Stokes playing, in the front court was solid defensively, and you really wanted to focus on that, but having a starter contribute 1 or 2 points on average per game, it's kind of bonkers talk to think that a team like that is going to run the table and win a championship, given how much everyone else has leveled up. And I think, like, when you talk about, rebounding to beat Connecticut, like, sorry to Connecticut, but that team is a struggle bus.
It doesn't speak any sort of volumes to me when a team that's the caliber of Vegas and has a player like the caliber of A'ja Wilson can beat a team like the Sun by 20. Like, again, no disrespect to Connecticut, but that doesn't show me anything. Like, that doesn't show me that you are figuring things out, the fundamental problems that we have seen with this Aces squad. That doesn't show me that now all of a sudden they've turned a corner and they're figuring things out going into the All-Star break.
If you look at their schedule, just to put this into further context, they've played Connecticut 3 times, okay? 26-point margin, 25-point margin, 18-point margin. So that's where you're getting a lot of your margin from. They beat Los Angeles by 15, but then you have single-digit wins, and kind of like the standout is they beat Seattle by 5, beat Phoenix by 3, beat Indiana by 8, but then, you're losing to Washington and Minnesota by 14. You're getting blown out by Seattle and Indiana and Golden State. That was a really bad game.
Yeah.
I don't see them, probably making it to the semifinals if it's 2 weeks before All-Star and it's the umpteenth time your coach has called out your effort.
That's kind of the big thing to me, is it feels like the Aces keep taking 1 step forward and 2 steps back. That it's, you win a game, you gotta wash off all of the bad that was, you start to feel yourself again, you start to feel like you're figuring things out, and then you suffer a couple of bad losses here and there. You suffer a really brutal loss, like the 30-point loss to the Fever last week, and then Becky Hammon has to call someone out or call the team out in a press conference, and then that makes headlines, and then they turn things around. It's just like this constant cycle, and at some point, if we're not already at this point already, Becky Hammon's messaging falls flat. If you keep hearing the same thing from your coach over and over again, and your coach is using the same avenues to express disappointment or frustration, all of a sudden that just becomes like another week. It's habit, and it doesn't land or resonate the same way. Obviously, the Aces went under several changes this past offseason. Other teams were buying and building, and the Aces just kind of stayed the same. Is this a Becky Hammon problem more than it's a roster problem?
I think time maybe remains to be seen. I mean, they don't have a GM right now, so you always wonder what kind of conversations are going on about adding players or trades or whatever. What I will say about Becky Hammon is this is a coach who came into a team that was, on the rise and set up to just finally get over that final hump and win a championship. And kudos to everything she did during those first 2 years to win back-to-back, and then last year make it to the semifinals. But this is kind of the first stretch we've seen out of Becky Hammon, I think, where she's really, really going to have to coach and have a front office that maybe is willing to mix things up and make some changes, because Kelsey Plum leaving sounds like a Kelsey Plum decision, asking for that, that trade, sign and trade after the core designation. Bringing Joel Lloyd in is great, but what else have you done?
Yeah. And when you win back-to-back championships, it's not always common that you hear a star marquee player start to look around at other options. And I think the Aces are in a position where they might feel a little bit more empowered to, take a detour and start to do things differently because they have those championships. And they still have a star in Asia Wilson, who is a, incredible tool either for a rebuild or, either you hold on to Asia Wilson as your foundation or you trade her for pieces and start, that rebuild. Not saying that is what they are going to do or if that's on the horizon, but the Aces having those championships and having pieces, real negotiating pieces, I think can aid in a rebuild moving forward. It's just a matter of, do you want to try and run it back and retool, or is it completely tear it down and rebuild? That is what I think is, left to be seen. Again, the Aces are still sitting at 500. They're 5th in the West. It's not like this team is horrific. It's not like this team is just like the laughing stock of the WNBA, and it's not like this team can't figure things out and potentially make a run in the postseason. It's just there hasn't been anything that I've seen, and maybe you have, Cass, but there hasn't been anything that I have seen enough consistency to say that this Aces team can figure it out and make a run for the postseason.
Yeah, I think also, the saying of winning masks issues a lot. Now that they're losing and losing pretty regularly at this point to be 500, to your point, what does that open up? What kind of questions? What kind of, mixing it up are they going to do? I think also, they haven't had a good first round pick, or at times any first round pick, because of some of those investigations where they've lost a pick. And so they haven't been able to bring in, a quality young player to add to this group.